Chapter 8. Slides. You deserve the best. Illusion. Transurfing suggests that we should be careful when tempted to interpret illusion as pure fantasy of the mind. Dreams, hallucinations, psychotic reality perception, and even reality itself are all generally referred to as illusion. With the exception of psychosis, the perception of a different reality is more than just a fantasy of the mind. Dreams and hallucinations are experienced as a result of the soul's journeying through the alternatives space. Illusory perceptions of reality are often experienced when we glimpse other sectors of the information field that have not yet been streamed into the pathways of material reality. And finally, reality itself is no illusion. Anyone bold enough to claim that all they perceive is nothing more than an illusion has too high an opinion of themselves. For some reason, man has assumed that he must be capable of understanding and providing a rational explanation for all natural phenomena, when in fact, we are only capable of understanding some of the laws of the universe and some of life's many manifestations. For not all natural phenomena are subject to rational explanation. On the one hand, declaring that some of the things we witness are illusions is an acknowledgement of our failure to provide a logical explanation for everything, and yet on the other hand, the capacity of the intellect is overestimated in the claim that the illusion is generated by the brain or imagined by the mind. When people are under the powerful influence of drugs or alcohol, they lose control of their awareness, as we do in dreaming. When this happens, the subconscious mind becomes attuned to unrealized areas of the alternatives space. Perception roams the virtual sector while the body remains in the physical sector, i.e. the material world. We may walk along familiar streets and buildings, but see things in a distorted light. People and places will look strangely different because the scenery has changed, becoming half dream and half reality. Similarly, psychotic patients may perceive an unrealized sector of the field whilst their body is present in a realized sector. In this case, the individual's perception is attuned to a sector in the alternative space where not only the scenery is different, but the scripts and roles have also changed. People with mental health issues are not necessarily ill in the normal sense of the word. It is assumed that a patient simply imagines themselves in the role of Napoleon or some other odious personality, but they may in fact be experiencing an alternative reality. The alternative space contains infinite possible realities. The individual simply chooses the alternative they feel the most drawn to. When the conflict between heart and mind reaches its peak, and the tortured soul can no longer bear the harshness of physical reality, personal perception usually ends up in a virtual sector of the information field, leaving the body to continue living out its existence in the material sector. A psychiatrist once shared the story of a female patient who suffered a pathological desire to have the ideal husband and children. Expressed using the terms of transurfing, the importance the poor woman had attributed to having the ideal family was right off the scale. In the end, she married a man who brutally abused her and was herself unable to conceive a child. Real life became unbearable, and the woman ended up in psychiatric unit, having lost all awareness of the materialized sector of the alternatives space. Her body remained in the material world, but her awareness had attuned to a virtual sector of the alternative space in which she was idyllically happy, playing the role of wife to an English lord and mother to perfect children. The woman's perception was totally focused on a virtual sector of the field, and yet to all intent and purpose, she appeared to be living in the same material world as everyone else. Why is it that virtual sectors of the field that are the focus of the mentally ill are not transformed into physical reality? Doctors try to help psychiatric patients with contemporary medicine, but many patients are actually happier living in an illusory world, which they find a great deal more pleasurable than the physical reality they previously had to endure. What these people are experiencing is not really an illusion as such, but an unrealized alternative of reality which exists in the information field just as fully as the sector that exists as a physical manifestation. As we have already said, an alternative reality is transformed into physical reality when thought energy is programmed in a state of complete harmony between the heart and mind. Obviously, it is not possible for a psychiatric patient to embody this kind of connection. Perhaps the distortion between the material world and virtual sectors is too great, and so it would require too much energy to realize the virtual sector in the material plane. A contemporary Napoleon, for example, would be an extraordinary occurrence and an alternative reality that lies far beyond the potential limits of the alternative's flow. There may also be other reasons that we are currently unaware of. As far as perceiving alternative realities, we are also capable of experiencing a false, distorted perception of our physical reality. A person's manner of perception greatly depends on the information they have absorbed in childhood. In a well-known experiment, 2 kittens were kept in different environments. One kitten was kept in an environment that contained no vertical objects, and the other in an environment that contained no horizontal objects. After some time, the kittens were both brought into an ordinary room. The first kitten was constantly bumping into chair legs because in its perception, vertical lines simply did not exist. And the second kitten, who could not comprehend the phenomenon of horizontal lines, constantly slipped down the stairs. Of course, the mind is capable of great imagination and fantasy, but only within the relatively narrow limits of its accumulated experience. The mind can only construct a new model of a house from the bricks of a previous design. So where is the line between imagination and actual perception of another reality? It is a fine line that has no concrete boundaries, and yet this is of no great relevance to the purpose of this book. What is important, however, is how our internal beliefs affect our perception of reality and how this reflects on a person's life. Next, we will explore what lies at the root of a distorted perception of reality and how strongly this distortion can influence the shape of one's physical reality. Distorting reality. No individual is capable of a totally objective perception in the world around them. It is like inserting a slide into a video projector. Uniform light passes through the film and is transformed into an image that becomes visible on the screen. Metaphorically speaking, the light represents the world around us. The slide represents our worldview, i.e., the model of our understanding of the world. And the image on the screen is our perception of things. How individuals perceive themselves and their environment is always relative to the truth. It is our personal slides that introduce the element of distortion. For example, when a person is obsessively concerned with some symptom or personal shortcoming, they tend to experience a feeling of inferiority and low self-esteem. They also tend to assume that their weaknesses matter to other people as much as they do to themselves. So when they are communicating with others, they insert an inferiority complex slide into their projector, which makes them see things in a distorted light. You might, for example, be worried about how you are dressed. It might even seem to you that other people are looking at you with disdain or sneering at you. However, the people around you will not be thinking anything of the sort. The negative thoughts are all in your own head in the form of a slide which distorts your picture of reality. As a rule, most people are 90% preoccupied with thoughts of their own person. Even if you are sitting through a job interview, you can be certain that the interviewer is thinking more about how well they are playing their own role than they are about the suitability of the interviewee. Slides distort your perception of what other people think about you. A slide is a distorted picture of reality. A slide is something you carry around in your brain that others do not have in theirs. For example, you might consider your looks to be insufficiently attractive. If the thought does not particularly bother you, then no distortion is created. Things are what they are. The issue is not so much what you think of your personal appearance, so much as the wider influence of the corresponding slide can have on your life. If you are worried about appearance, you will create a slide in your head that reads, "I am not beautiful or handsome," and you will look at the external world through the slide as through a filter. The corresponding image is a slide because it exists solely in your own thoughts. Only potential partners, a very small percentage of the people you come into contact with, actually evaluate, i.e., attribute importance to your external appearance. No one else particularly notices what you look like. If you do not believe me, ask the severest arbitrator you know, yourself, how much the outward appearance of people you meet matters to you if they are not part of your immediate circle as a potential partner or competitor. It probably does not even occur to you to question whether you find these people attractive or not. Other people think the same way, or do not think at all, with regard to yourself. Even if you think you are ugly, you can be certain that the same principle applies. Ugliness makes an impression only in the first moment of meeting, but after that, it ceases to attract attention, like any other part of the scenery. So let us suppose that you have inserted a slide into the mental projector relating to your seemingly unattractive appearance. You will perceive other people's behavior, be it a look, facial expression, or other aspect of body language through the perspective of the slide. What will you see as a result? You will see a sneer in a welcoming smile and hear mockery in the sound of happy laughter. You will be convinced that quiet whispering is other people gossiping about you. A random glance is interpreted as an askance look. All someone has to do is wince from indigestion and you think, "Lord, what must they be thinking of me?" Finally, any compliment makes you feel patronized. Yet people will be thinking nothing of the sort. It will all be in your head, fashioned by a slide of your own making. Your behavior is also affected by your thoughts, which can make you genuinely unattractive. You may start making awkward gestures with your hands, not knowing where to put them. Your face will become distorted by tension, and all intelligent thought will disappear as the inferiority complex claims the seat of domination in your mind. As a result, the slide in your imagination is played out in the material dimension. The action of slides is twofold. Firstly, their bias skews the perception of your true place in the world and how others relate to you. Secondly, they distort your perception of the external world. In addition, people have a tendency to perceive the self-deprecating qualities of their own slides in the people around them. For example, when a person dislikes certain innate qualities in their own character, they try to hide them so that they will not have to look at that part of themselves. And yet it is impossible to conceal an unsightly slide. It sits in the person's head, doing its own thing. If you buy into the basic illusion that others think and act just as you do, you will tend to perceive in others the qualities that you dislike in yourself, i.e., hang your projections on others. A projection is when a person's dissatisfaction with self that has been forced into the subconscious pours out onto others. No one wants to criticize themselves for their own unacceptable attributes, and so they tend to ascribe them to other people instead. People are often quick to criticize others for the very things they dislike in themselves. You have probably done the same thing yourself without being aware that you were doing it. Of course, this does not necessarily mean that whenever a person blames someone for something negative, they necessarily embody the same quality themselves, but it is often the case. Observe yourself. The position of the inner guardian in role plays will enable you to quickly tell whether someone is trying to hang a projection on you. If someone is unfairly accusing you of something or accusing you of being something that you're not, ask yourself whether that person embodies the same trait themselves. It is probable that they do, because if you are genuinely not guilty of what you are being accused of, the accuser probably has a slide in their own head that is projecting its image onto you. What serves as the foundation for the slide? What film role does it belong to? The answer is importance. We keep coming back to importance. You worry about your outward appearance because it is important to you. The slide lives in your head alone, given that your appearance does not matter to anyone else for any particular reason. Ugliness or physical deformity is just part of the scenery to everyone else, because to them it is of no personal significance. Other people note the appearance as unusual, but nothing more. It is the biased slide of importance that claims an unusual appearance to be ugly. Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, the famous French painter, broke both his legs in childhood and was physically handicapped for his entire life. While growing up, Lautrec suffered depression caused by the realization of his own ugliness. As the years passed, his physical deformity became all the more evident, causing him to suffer even more deeply. There came a point at which his distress reached its peak, and Lautrec was forced to attempt the inevitable. He finally overcame the limitations of his deformity and threw himself into life. As soon as he let go of the importance of his condition, the slide ceased to exist, and good fortune came his way. Aside from realizing his talent as a painter, he was also extremely popular with the ladies. Lautrec was one of the founders of the famous Moulin Rouge Cabaret in Paris. He was loved by many women, and not only for his paintings. Slides are created when you attribute too much meaning to other people's opinions of you. If it matters to you what other people think of you, and yet you do not know what their opinions are exactly, a slide will take firm root in your mind. The slide is a product of the imagination, and so it can be called an illusion, and yet it is an illusion that can deeply affect a person's life. Slides are one example of how outer intention can act to your detriment, irrespective of your personal will. As a rule, a negative slide is generated by unity between heart and mind. As you may remember, outer intention works flawlessly under these conditions. It catches the owner of the negative slide and carries them to a sector where the content of the slide is expressed to its full intent. The transition does not take place straight away. It is a gradual and consistent process which lasts for as long as the slide remains in the person's mind. The light strokes a person sketches onto their negative slide when they first get a whiff of importance become sharper and eventually end up larger than life. If a person hates being plump, they will continue to put on weight. And if a birthmark bothers them, it will continue to get bigger. If a person considers themselves basically inadequate, they will quickly receive confirmation that this is the case. The more a person worries about being unattractive, the greater the problem will become, just as a person tortured by feelings of guilt will find punishment to be forthcoming and plentiful. The behavioral pattern will continue until such time as the person stops ascribing the slide such great importance or switches to creating a positive slide. As soon as importance disappears, the negative slide loses its foundation, crumbles, and ceases to function. All you have to do is insert a positive colored slide, and you will see that it works just as flawlessly as a negative one. Focus on the most positive slides of your personality, and people will perceive you in that light. This is the other positive aspect of slides which can and should be exploited. Positive slides. When you concentrate your attention on the unwanted parts of yourself that you would rather conceal or be rid of altogether, you create a negative slide. The task in this case is to switch your attention to the qualities you do like about yourself and other attributes you'd like to acquire. As we have shown previously, it is not possible to totally disguise your imperfections, but if you want to, you can easily emphasize and develop your strengths and virtues. First of all, you should take stock and look at your negative slides. Ask yourself what it is you do not like about yourself. What would you rather hide or be rid of? Slides are created subconsciously, but now you can wake up and consciously look at your negative slides in the eye. In a conscious state of awareness, you can easily determine what your negative slides are. The mind needs to be cleared of negative slides like we clear our space of unnecessary junk, but it is much harder to clear the mind of slides than it is to locate them. Clearing a negative slide is not like shaving off a beard. So how can you root out your negative slides? If you battle with a negative slide, it will assert itself even more forcibly. You have to deprive slides of their essential foundation, namely your attention and the significance you attribute them. You have to switch your attention from negative to positive. Dismiss with the wave of a hand anything that has been getting you down and give up the internal battle. Turn your attention away from your shortcomings and toward your virtues and any other positive qualities you would like to acquire. Is it important to disguise your shortcomings? If so, this is the basis of a negative slide. Is it important to you to make a good impression? If so, this is the foundation of a positive slide. Nothing changes except the focus of your attention and the importance you ascribe to things. Draw yourself as you would wish to see yourself. You do not have to worry about the danger of indulging in self-deception because you are playing this game consciously. Battling with your failings, on the other hand, you can hide them or dismantle them by setting personal intentions is a self-deception. Create a slide where you see yourself shining in all your glory. Love the you that you see in the slide. Work on the image, embellishing it with detail. The slide does not have to depict a static image. It can be a representation of how gracefully and confidently you move, how elegantly you dress, your aristocratic manners, shining wit and charm, how quickly other people warm to you, or what brilliant problem-solving skills you have. Feed the slide into your mind and forward. Just like a negative slide, a positive slide will directly affect your actions and overall behavior. You will unwittingly, unconsciously begin to adjust to the slide. The main task, though, is for outer intention to fulfill the picture in the slide. You have to recreate the picture in your thoughts until the slide dissolves. What I mean by this is that with time, the slide will become an integrated part of your personality, at which point it will cease to exist. Once you achieve your desire, the slide will cease to be significant. Importance will disappear, and the slide will melt away, but not without first fulfilling its mission. When this happens, the heart will be in harmony with the mind. The slide's mission cannot fail to be fulfilled because you desire it with both your heart and your mind. When the mind tries to transform a slide into reality by itself, your heart knows that it is just playing a game of masks. On the other hand, if you systematically and consecutively consolidate the slide's image in your thoughts, the heart will get used to it and agree to integrate the slide into its essence. Remember that outer intention will not realize the slide immediately. It requires time and the effect is gradual. As you can see, it really is not that difficult to achieve the desired result. It is all about the will to have. The pictures you draw on your slides can be connected to any qualities you think are lacking. However, it is important to be aware of how realistic it is to manifest your slide in physical reality. It is better to start with steps that are realistically achievable than to start by drawing a picture of your absolute ideal. With time, you can progress to closer versions of it. One thing you must avoid doing is creating an image that is a copy of someone else you believe already has the qualities you wish to embody. Your slide must be truly yours and not a copy of someone else's. We will return to this idea in more detail in the next chapter. For now, it is enough to say that any quality you admire will have an aspect to it that you can apply to the initial stages. Bravery can be represented by resoluteness, beauty by charm, strength by dexterity, the ability to talk by the ability to listen, intellectuality by awareness, and physical perfection by confidence. By setting realistically achievable goals, you give outer intention the opportunity to fulfill your minimum order more quickly, which means it can then be set about realizing more complex tasks. Positive slides will take effect more rapidly and effectively if you interact with people you have not met before, as they will have no previous conception of you. This could be at an interview, a competition, a party, or some other event. Feed the necessary slide boldly and fearlessly into your mind. Remember the picture on the slide and hold it constantly in your awareness. Indulge yourself and disregard any doubt or wavering that might pop up, such as, what if it does not work? Avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. Let go of your doubts and anxieties. If your will to have is strong enough, you will achieve your maximum potential and sometimes even incredible success. Positive slides can be created not only in connection with your personality, but also in relation to the outside world. This type of slide lets the positive in, but blocks the negative out. If you remember in the chapter, The Wave of Fortune, we discussed the transmission of positive energy. In any scenario, it is most advantageous to be open to all that is good and to ignore anything bad. At an exhibition, you stop to look at the exhibits you find attractive and walk indifferently past the others. The outside world differs from an exhibition in that if you do not pass negativity by indifferently, it will start following you around. By the same token, if you accept it joyfully, the positive will never leave you. It might seem that positive slides are like rose-tinted glasses. Contrary to the established view of things, rose-tinted glasses are the invention of pessimists, not optimists. Pessimists are pragmatically fearful of seeing everything in a rosy light, and hence instructively warn optimists against doing so. This pragmatism is nothing more than a negative slide. The pessimists cannot allow themselves the luxury of having, and so they receive accordingly. There is no need to worry that the positive slide will skew your perception. In the majority of cases, the element of inner control will make sure that any distortion is relatively minor. The distortion brought about by a positive slide will be beneficial, as long as you do not go to the extremes of imagining yourself to be a Napoleon. Everything should be approached in good measure, not forgetting the dangers of excess potential. In contrast, the distortion created by a negative slide can do immeasurable harm, but the fact of the distortion is not the primary issue. The main feature of a slide lies in that fact that outer intention will slowly transform it into physical reality. Widening your comfort zone. Are you filled with the ambitious desire to become a star or a millionaire? If so, can you give yourself permission to become one? Most people believe that fame, money, and power are the privilege of the chosen few. But if this is the case, who chooses the chosen ones? Primarily, they chose themselves, and only later is the choice confirmed by others. If you dream of something but cannot allow yourself to have the dream, it just will not happen. A homeless person may stand in the street gazing through a window at a Christmas table, but can they allow themselves to sit at the table and eat? Of course, if invited, they would accept. It takes decisiveness to walk into a house and sit at a table, i.e. inner intention. But as the homeless person is well aware, who would extend such an invitation to them? The Christmas table exists in the layer of someone else's world. Is a homeless person ready to have this table in their own home, in the layer of their own life? They know that they do not have the house or the money, or the means to earn it. Outer intention will not give the homeless person anything, because at the level of pure common sense, they are not actually ready to have. Suppose you want to get rich. Would you be ready to accept this gift of fate? Of course, if someone were giving away a spare million, we would all find it in ourselves to accept the gift without any problem. Wealth will not ruin your life, as some films with a moral try to teach us. But this is not my point. Are you ready to take the million? You are probably thinking that I mean that the million must be earned and won, but this is not what I mean either. Are you simply ready to choose and allow yourself to have? You have come to terms with the idea that you will achieve your goal. If you want to be wealthy but are afraid of walking into expensive shops, you will not achieve your goal. If you experience discomfort when visiting an expensive shop, it means you are not ready to give yourself permission to own expensive things. The shop's assistants in such places can tell immediately who they are dealing with: a potential buyer or a window shopper with an empty wallet. A buyer acts as if they are in control and holds themselves in a calm, confident, and dignified manner, aware of their right to look around and choose. The curious window shopper, who is hungry with desire but poor, behaves like an unwanted guest. They have a tense, stiff, slightly inhibited manner. They sense the evaluating looks of the shop attendants and all but apologize for daring to appear in such a prestigious place. The merely curious visitor simultaneously creates a whole range of importance potential: desire, envy, feelings of inferiority, irritation, and dissatisfaction, because not only is the shopper not ready to allow themselves to have all this material wealth and luxury, they do not even consider themselves worthy of it. For the mind harps on, none of this is for us. We are poor. We need something a little more modest. And the heart takes what the mind tells it literally. Give yourself permission to be worthy of the luxury. You genuinely deserve the best. Destructive pendulums only instill the idea that you must cut your coat according to your cloth, because it is to their advantage to keep you under control. Walk boldly into expensive shops and look at their wares with the manner of an owner and not a servant to a wealthy house. Using self-suggestion to persuade yourself that you can afford to buy expensive things is of course futile. So how can you find a way of believing and giving yourself permission to have? To begin with, let us distinguish between the realms of inner and outer intention with the phrase, "be willing to give yourself permission." People who are used to thinking and acting within the limits of inner intention tend to be quite categorical. Quote, "I cannot afford this, full stop. What else is there to say?" End quote. Well, it is true that there is not any point in trying to persuade yourself that you can afford something expensive when all you can feel in your pocket is an empty wallet. Here, though, we are talking about something else. Inner intention entails the decision to act, i.e., to find the money. However, because the money is not there to find, the mind announces a pragmatic verdict. You really will not achieve anything at all if you act solely within the realms of inner intention. Outer intention will not hand the goods to you on a plate like manna from heaven either. For how can something come to you if even you will not give yourself permission to have it? Outer intention requires the will to have. In other words, considering yourself worthy and knowing that it all comes down to your personal choice. With outer intention, it is not so much a matter of believing as knowing. In your heart, you always doubt that a dream can really come true, and so just being willing to take the necessary action is not enough. If you do not actually believe that your dream can come true, you will not feel worthy of it either, or you will doubt that the goal is realistic. People who become celebrities and millionaires are no different to the rest of us in their abilities, but they do distinguish themselves in being able to give themselves permission to have the things they want. It is essential to give yourself permission to have. The feeling is similar to riding a bicycle without stabilizers for the first time, when suddenly all doubt, hesitation, and verbiage disappears, leaving nothing but the wordless clarity of knowing. The feeling of clarity without words, knowledge without faith, confidence without hesitation comes from the unity that exists between heart and mind. When you experience this state, you sense your own oneness with the silent force that rules the universe. This force catches you and carries you into a sector where the subject of agreement between heart and mind can be manifest. Everyone is free to choose whatever they desire, but far from everyone believes in this overriding principle of indulgence and leniency. No matter what I say, you may not yet fully believe in the freedom of choice. Because the majority of people still live under the power of pendulums, life tends to give examples of the opposite. Even if you have freed yourself from the clutches of pendulums, freedom of choice may still lie beyond the limits of your comfort zone. It seems too unreal, too implausible to have freedom of choice in a world of pendulums. In your heart, you probably do not believe that achieving a remote goal is down to personal choice. However, positive slides can help include the implausible into your comfort zone. When the idea that any dream is achievable no longer makes you uneasy, doubt will melt away and faith will be transformed into knowledge. The heart will come into harmony with the mind, and the will to have appears. It is futile to try and convince the heart of anything. The heart does not reason, it just knows. The heart can be taught, however, and is capable of embracing a new comfort zone. This requires a slide. With the help of slides, unity between heart and mind can gradually be achieved. The fortress is taken by lengthy siege. Create the dream slide in your mind and hold it in your awareness constantly. Return to the picture you have created again and again and refine the details constantly, adding new elements to it. Do not look at the slide from the standpoint of the objective observer. Delve into it. Live it, at least virtually. Pinch yourself every time you find yourself picturing the slide like an image from the film on a flat screen, as this is not very effective. You have to mentally play out the scenes, experiencing yourself as a direct participant rather than a cinema goer. Whatever you are doing, conjure up the slide in your mind's eye as often as you can. You can think about other things, but the picture should always be there in the background. Seeing the slide has to become habit. A slide will only bring results if it is reproduced systematically over a period of time. Express an active interest in anything that relates to the object of your dream. Absorb all the necessary information, allowing it to penetrate the layer of your world. It helps to play your slide out in real life, at least formally. For example, in those expensive shops, you can practice how you would like to choose. Do not think about the money and do not look at the price tags, because money is not the goal so much as what you can buy with it. It is enough simply to be around expensive items, to feel the taste of them, to spend time choosing calmly, looking around and evaluating the items on display. Allow all these things into your personal space. Look at the items as if you were planning to purchase them soon, and not as if they represented an unattainable luxury. Pretend you own the goods already. Let the shop assistants think you are the potential buyer. Play at being a buyer who is discerning in their taste, being careful not to be superior. By letting these things into the layer of your world, you will gradually attune to a lifeline in which they can be yours. There is no need to be concerned with how the things you want will become yours. If you are resolute in your desire to have, outer intention will, without your knowing how, find a way you would never have suspected. When this happens, do not be surprised. Do not try to convince yourself that it is a coincidence or show of mysticism. I do not remember now who exactly said, "Coincidence is a pseudonym for God," when he does not want to leave his signature. Whenever you feel the slightest sense of awe for the world of your dream, drive the feeling out of your mind. Outer and inner importance are obstacles on the path to unity of heart and mind. This is your world, and there is nothing in it that is unavailable to you. The world of your dream should be joyful and at the same time commonplace. When something is yours, it seems unremarkable and has an everyday quality to it. So in order to attune yourself to a lifeline that corresponds to your dream, you have to feel as if you already had it. You are consciously playing a game, not just kidding yourself. There is no better example of the will to have than the new Russian billionaires, who are now more numerous in Russia than in the developed countries of the West. During perestroika at the end of the 1980s, certain lightweight politicians decided that a socialist economy could immediately be transformed into a market economy if everything were to be privatized. Those who understood the significance of the moment and happened to be right next to the feed box got rich straight away without any particular effort or manpower. Everything that had belonged to the state during the socialist epoch, such as oil, gas, gold, and diamonds, as well as various natural, industrial, and intellectual resources, instantly became the property of a small handful of oligarchs. What had been common property now belonged to a small handful who had never studied business management, unlike the real billionaires who had to actually earn their millions. All those who found themselves close to the feed box had to do was put out their hand and shout, "Mine," and then seal it with a legal document. On what basis did property that was previously common come to be owned by this elite group of individuals? This period in Russia's history is of course unique, but there were many other talented people around at the time who ended up with nothing. So why these few? The individuals who finally reaped the resources were the ones who gave themselves permission to have. The newfound wealthy few suffered no feelings of guilt, qualms of conscience, doubt, or sense of inferiority. They did not consider themselves in any way undeserving, and it never occurred to them to feel guilty for shopping in expensive boutiques. They had the will to have, and so dispassionate outer intention gave them what they wanted. And yet you would think this approach implausible. Visualizing the goal. The transurfing methods proposed for reaching personal goals lie beyond the realms of common sense and conventional worldview. Of all known unconventional methods, visualizing one's goals has most in common with the methods of transurfing. Visualization involves using the imagination to create a mental picture of a goal in as much detail as possible and carrying the picture in your mind. The conventional worldview would say that this visualization is a waste of time. It is true that distance is covered by the one who walks the road and not by the one who sits around lost in daydreams. However, imagining a mental picture of the goal has the same deciding weight as the actual process of achieving it for reasons you are already aware of. The one who simply walks the road will achieve average results and live the same life as everyone else, making their own fine contribution to the majesty of common sense. In contrast, the pilgrim, who has the methods of transurfing at their disposal, is capable of achieving the kind of results that common sense can only attempt to explain, grasping the notions of luck, coincidence, and fate's chosen few. From the point of view of common sense, transurfing seems to turn everything on its head. The same, of course, can be said of common sense from the view of transurfing. If you do not want to live like everyone else, if you do not want to be content with mediocre achievements, if you strive to experience life to the maximum, then you are a pilgrim. In transurfing, the pilgrim is not Lady Fortune's chosen one. On the contrary, Lady Fortune is the pilgrim's choice. You can achieve anything you want if you succeed in toppling the monolith of common sense. This does not mean floating in the clouds, quite the opposite. It means coming back to earth and grounding, because the majority of what we call common sense is nothing of the kind. You will have seen the truth of this several times already, and many more unusual ideas await you yet. We still need to answer the question of why visualization does not always bring about the desired result. Even dedicated followers of alternative psychology and all things esoteric cannot totally depend on visualization for success. Various visualization techniques exist, ranging from quite simple to more complex versions, and they all work to varying degrees of success. Sometimes they work, and sometimes they do not. Like me, you may find this level of reliability unsatisfactory, and so I would like to reassure you from the outset that the technique used in transurfing is slightly different. As long as it is practiced according to the rules, transurfing offers a no-fail visualization technique. There are 3 common types of visualization techniques. The first type is the dream. From a practical point of view, this is the weakest and most unreliable form of visualization. There is no harm in dreaming, but in terms of transformation, it is fairly useless. Dreams do not come true. As a rule, those who love to fantasize are not actually expecting their dream to be realized. They might think they do, but deep down they either do not believe it is really possible or lack the intent to have an act. Dreamers look at their dreams in the same way as they gaze at the distant stars. When you hint to them of castles in the sky, they close up like an oyster clamps its shells shut. Leave my dream alone! When you define the goal of the dreamer with more precision, you find that it is in fact just the process of dreaming and nothing more. The second type of visualization is the film. I do not mean the kind of film one watches at the cinema, but the kind of film people watch in their mind in relation to their desires. This is different to simply dreaming because the process is initiated consciously. There is the intent to have and to act, and one action undertaken includes visualizing the realization of your desire as if you were watching a film. For example, you want to have your own house, and so you imagine the house of your dreams in all sorts of different ways and in all its detail, i.e., according to the rules of visualization. In your mind, you will probably have a very clear picture of what the house looks like and will hold the image in your mind's eye every day. If you fulfill this task perfectly, you would expect to see the desire materialize. But guess what? You will see much the same or exactly the same house that you imagined, but it will not actually belong to you. It will be a house that belongs to someone else because you get what you order. If you work conscientiously on visualizing your perfect house, but do not explain to the waiter that the house belongs to you, the waiter will simply carry out your order perfectly. You can end up being so busy with the quality of the visualization process, like they teach in the books on the subject, that you forget about the most important thing: who owns the house? This is the key mistake most people make when they practice this type of visualization. The film remains a film they will never participate in. They end up staring at it like a beggar stares into a shop window. In the third type of visualization, the person plays a role in the film rather than simply observing it. This type of visualization is much more effective. By playing an active role in the visualized material, you set the parameters of your thought energy to the corresponding lifeline. For example, if your goal is to have a new home, there is no point in looking at it in your thoughts as you would at a painting. Create a kind of virtual waking dream. Enter the house. Walk through the rooms, touching things as you go. Sink into an armchair across from the fireplace and feel the cozy warmth and smell of smoke. Put a couple of logs on the fire. Go into the kitchen. Take a look in the fridge to see what you can find. Go sleep in a comfortable bed. Do you feel relaxed? Sit at the table with your family. Have a housewarming party. Move the furniture around. Touch the grass in the garden, noticing how green and soft it is. Plant some flowers. What are your favorite? Pick an apple from the tree and eat it. Make yourself at home because it is your home. Do not look at it with the eyes of a suffering dreamer, with awe as if it were something unavailable or some distant prospect. The house is already yours. Act as if it were real. As you know, the visualization described above represents a slide. This kind of slide will widen your comfort zone, and with time is sure to be materialized, although when exactly, no one can say. You may have to wait a long time. It all depends on how you work with the slide. If all you do is play with it for a while and then forget about it, you will not have much to hope for. There really are no miracles. It is important to remember the following points when working with a slide. Firstly, if you lose passion for your goal, it will dissipate. And if you have to force yourself to work with a goal, you will soon become fed up with it. If this is the case, you should ask yourself whether you really need the slide or not. Secondly, it is worth remembering that outer intention does not manifest slides straight away. It gradually brings you closer to the targeted lifelines. It requires patience and perseverance. Perseverance is essential only in the initial stages. Once visualizing the slide becomes a habit, you will not have to force yourself to remember to do the exercise. Finally, if the goal itself is not your personal goal, but a goal mixed up with pendulums, you will not be able to generate the necessary state of unity between heart and mind required to achieve it. We will talk more about this in the forthcoming chapters. If you strive toward your goal with all your heart, then visualization of the slide will definitely bring results. When you acquire the genuine will to have, outer intention will find a way of realizing your goal. If you think the slide represents the entire method of visualization in transurfing, you are mistaken. Even a slide of the highest quality can take a long time to materialize, particularly if the goal lies in a fairly remote sector of the alternative space in relation to your current lifeline. The process of reaching the goal, however, can be quickened with the help of transurfing visualization technique. Soon you will learn what that is. Visualizing the process. Let us practice this task a little and imagine that your main goal is to get rich. In an attempt to reach this goal, you practice visualizing a suitcase stuffed full of notes. You do the exercise according to all the rules of the third visualization type over a relatively long period of time. What will the result be from this practice, and when will it show itself? The answer is that there never will be any result. You can practice this exercise every day for the rest of your life, and at best, you will see suitcases crammed full of money a little more often, most probably in films. Your chances of finding the treasure or winning the lottery are very slim, and who wants to rely on chance? You will wonder why this is. After all, in your thoughts you constantly open the case, take out the money, rearrange the notes, stroke them, and all but eat them. If the third type of visualization is more than just a film, what is the problem? And what about that all-powerful outer intention? From the point of view of transurfing, there are two mistakes that undermine the example of visualization shown above. The first is that your true goal is not really a suitcase filled with money. Money is an attribute, not a means, and certainly not a goal. We will talk more about personal goals later. For now, we will push ahead. The second mistake is that concentrating attention on the end goal will not move you toward that goal unless you are already just one step away from achieving it. Of course, your comfort zone will be widened and outer intention will gradually take effect, but you are not helping it. You have to at least put one foot in front of the other. And yet, the fact that you have to act as well as visualize is not the point here, as we are still discussing the practice of visualization. Until now, experience has told you that if you want to achieve something, you have to focus all your thoughts and efforts on your goal. Now you have to forget this idea. As I promised in the beginning, transurfing undoubtedly works, but you have to let go of commonly held ideas and embrace new ones that may seem a little incredible from a more conventional standpoint. We will explain how visualization in transurfing is fundamentally different to other visualization techniques. As you know, desire is the concentration of attention on a goal. Intention is the concentration of attention on movement towards the goal. The driving force behind any action is intention and not desire. Hence, what moves you to the goal is to visualize the process of moving towards the goal, rather than to contemplate the goal itself. Intention becoming realized is a process, not a fixation on one single frame. Although, of course, that does not mean that the goal cannot be part of the mental picture. The mental picture of the goal should serve as the background to the central focus, which is the process. Visualization of the process differs from visualization of the goal in the same way that intention differs from desire. Desire is ineffective. We return once again to the example of lifting your arm. Imagine that you want to raise your arm. First, think about the fact that you want to raise your arm and the result of that desire, i.e., the arm in a raised position. Now, lift up your arm. At the first stage, desire is strong, but nothing happens. There is simply a statement of the fact of the desire and a mental picture of the goal, the raised arm. At the second stage, intention is in action and continues to take effect for the whole time the arm remains in a raised position. During this process, the goal is understood to be the final image towards which one strives, but attention must be concentrated specifically on the process of achieving the goal. Finally, to desire something, to imagine oneself at the desired destination, is sufficient in the early stages. But to progress any further, you have to move and carry out a concrete process. These comments might seem trivial, but look at the conclusion they prompt us to make. Visualization of your goals is the work of desire, which will not bring you a single step closer to your goal. Your visualization will effectively be a dummy run. In transurfing, the visualization practice involves imagining a mental picture of the process of moving towards your goal, based on the principle that the goal must be reached sooner or later because the power of intention is working. Movement towards the goal does not take place in waking as quickly as it does in dreams, but there is tangible movement nonetheless. If you study the chapter Forward to the Past, you will even learn to see movement along lifelines. Whatever you're doing, if it involves a lengthy process, visualizing the process will help. This type of visualization method is not particularly helpful in creative work where the end goal may not yet have acquired distinct contours. What should be understood by visualization of the process in this context? You might be working on a piece of artwork and have an idea of the general qualities you wish the piece to convey, but not yet know how exactly it will turn out. When you take a break from your work, imagine that the piece you are creating is constantly improving. Today you complete certain details. Tomorrow you plan to add a few new touches. Imagine to yourself that your creation is becoming all the more transformed. You give it ever new qualities and it becomes a work of art in front of your very eyes. You are content, engrossed in the creative process, watching your baby grow with you. You will automatically know what to visualize in any situation. The secret is to go beyond contemplating the nature of your piece to imagining the very process of its birth, development, and perfection. There is no point in assuming that in your mental picture the creation or artistic piece will paint, sculpt, or construct itself. You are the one creating it, and the piece will reach its perfection in your hands. An artist creates and admires their work simultaneously. A perfect example of this is how a mother cares for her child when it is growing up. A mother feeds her child, puts it to bed, and imagines her tiny tot continuing to grow with each passing day. She takes care of her child at the same time as constantly confirming her admiration of its beauty. The mother plays with her child, constantly giving it instruction. She contemplates her child's intellectual development, anticipating the onset of schooling. As you can see, in relation to her child, the mother is not focusing on an end result, so much as simultaneously creating and visualizing an ongoing process. The mother does not simply observe her child's growth. She takes part in it, all the time imagining the child's development and the kind of person they will become. If what you are creating is a computer program, every day when you finish work, imagine that the program is gradually becoming more effective and easier to use, and how the next day you will impress everyone with new enhancements. If, on the other hand, you are working on a business project, imagine that innovative ideas suddenly occur to you and that every day you introduce unique proposals. Observe the growth of your project and give yourself permission to feel assured that it is being transformed into an example of best professional standards. If you are working with your body, nourish it as a mother does her child. Imagine that your body is gradually acquiring perfect form. Look after it, train it, and then imagine that you are building more muscle, making your body look more toned. Whatever the focus, visualize the process. Visualize the means by which your project will reach completion. Contemplating the end result will expand the limits of your comfort zone, and so in this sense it has value. But visualizing the process of moving towards your goal will significantly quicken the work of outer intention. Do not worry if you do not yet know how your goal can be realized. Continue to visualize your slide calmly and systematically. Once the goal fits easily within the limits of your comfort zone, outer intention will present you with a means. There is no need to rush about stressing over how to find a way of achieving your goal. Do away with importance and trust the alternatives flow. Watch the slide, live it, and you will automatically take the right type of action. The method does not stop at visualizing the process either. The material realization of the alternative space is inert, like resin, which is why, unless you have a Messiah's mastery of outer intention, the transition has to occur gradually. Gradually not only means continually, but also progressively. Herein lies the secret of another aspect of visualization in transurfing. Transfer chains. If the realization of your personal goal lies in lifelines which are quite distant from your current coordinates, it is practically impossible to attune your energy to these lifelines directly. For example, if you are intending to take an exam but have absolutely no knowledge of the relevant subject matter, you cannot attune your energy to a lifeline in which you pass the exam with flying colors. If you know nothing about the relevant subject, you will not be able to visualize your answer to a single question. The path that leads from your current position to your future goal might be quite long, although not necessarily in a temporal sense. It is not only your position that must change, but also your way of thinking, your manner, and perhaps even your character. You cannot attune the parameters of your energy to any level of precision without actually walking the path. If you try to visualize the process of moving towards a very distant goal, you may be tempted to jump ahead and rush events, which is ineffective and leads to frustration and annoyance, which in turn will set balanced forces against you. You can play a slide with a mental picture of the distant future in your mind as often as you like. It will not do any harm. But visualizing the process of moving along a part of the path that you would not naturally be treading for a while yet could end up getting you lost. Imagine that you have to head down a winding river. If you had the option, would you not walk along the riverbank instead of pulling the boat behind you and making a shortcut of the winding riverbeds? If the goal needs to be reached progressively, you will have to work through all the different stages towards it, whether you want to or not. For example, you cannot become a professional in any given field in one fell swoop. You have to first finish your studies, then find work, polish your professional skills, etc. This consecutive path towards a goal in the alternative space is called a transfer chain. Every link in the chain represents a separate stage. Because the individual stages are linked together in a chain, it is impossible to move onto any given stage without having completed the one immediately before it. For example, you cannot study for a master's degree before finishing your first university degree. Each link in the transfer chain is made up of interconnected and relatively homogeneous sectors of the alternative space. The path to the goal is made up of transfer chains, and the alternatives flow. The alternative space is inherently an ordered structure, which means that if you try to create a path to your goals in an unordered fashion, you will never reach them. You already know that in order to avoid disrupting the balance and losing a sense of the alternatives flow, you have to be careful not to create excess potential. Do not slap your hands on the surface of the water, and do not fight against the current. That just leaves one more rule, which is to practice visualizing the process of moving toward your goal at your current stage only. You can picture the end result as often as you like in the form of a slide, but the process should only be imagined within the context of your current link in the transfer chain. There is no need to hurry. Everything happens at the right time. Now we can give a final definition of visualization in the transurfing method as mentally picturing the realization process of your current link in the transfer chain. Mentally picturing an image helps to direct thought in the necessary direction. If thoughts are given just a little push, they will continue of their own momentum, both in a script as in dreaming. The goal is achieved by living out the link's realization process in both thought and action. As you can see, the approach is actually quite straightforward. It is not difficult to determine the separate links in your personal transfer chain. What if the sequence of movements towards the goal is not known to you yet, or you have no idea by what means or paths your goal might be achieved? Do not worry. We will repeat the steps you can take below. If you do not know yet how your goal might be realized, do not worry. Just continue visualizing your slide calmly and systematically. Once the limits of your comfort zone have been widened enough to embrace the goal, outer intention will offer up a suitable means to achieve it. There is no need to stress over finding the right way of achieving your goal. The slide itself will nudge you to take the necessary actions automatically, even subconsciously. Eliminate importance, remain calm, and trust the alternatives flow. Here, I would like to add a few more words about signs. If you interpret a sign which you believe might point towards the possibility of achieving your goal, you should be aware that signs only relate to your current link in the transfer chain and only have a very tenuous connection to the final goal. In other words, indicators only relate to the particular road you are walking at the current time. You can interpret signs that relate to anything about the current link in the transfer chain. However, if several chains separate your current lifeline from your target lifeline, the signs you perceive will not serve as indicators for the goal itself. This does not mean that signs symbolic of a distant goal do not exist. It just means that you will not be able to interpret them sufficiently reliably from your current position. In transurfing, with the exception of a negative response from the inner voice, sign interpretation is considered to be the least reliable technique one can use, so it is not recommended that you attribute them a great deal of meaning. It remains only to clarify the place of the third type of visualization has in transurfing, and whether it is worth practicing goal-based visualization techniques. The answer is unequivocal. It is essential to practice goal-based visualization in any form that is convenient. The goal should be held in the mind in the form of a slide which helps widen the limits of the comfort zone and attune the frequency of your thought energy to the target lifeline. This is the sole function of third type visualization. In contrast, the physical shift to a target lifeline is accomplished by the workhorse of transurfing, i.e., visualization of the process of moving towards the goal. By visualizing the process, you unite your personal inner intention with outer intention. Summary. Illusions are not the result of fantasy, but the perception of a different reality. People present in the material world are capable of perceiving other realities. Inner convictions can distort a person's objective perception of the world. A slide is something you carry around in your own mind that others do not. Slides distort the perception of true reality. People have a tendency to hang their projections on others around them. Importance lies at the foundation of all slides. As soon as importance disappears, the slide ceases to exist. Outer intention gradually but consistently realizes the content of the slide. Stop battling with yourself and switch your attention from the negative to the positive. Create a positive slide that is pleasing both to your heart and mind. Look at your slide more often, each time embellishing it with more detail. Never portray an image in your slide that is copied from another person. You will never receive anything that does not trigger your will to have. Allow yourself the luxury of deserving the absolute best. The will to have is the immutable knowledge that you deserve what you want and that it is your choice. Positive slides help you to push open the limits of your comfort zone to include things that previously seemed implausible. Do not treat the slide as if it were just a picture. Live it, at least in the virtual world. Allow in any information relating to the world of your dream. It is not contemplation of the result, but visualization of the process that moves you towards your goal. Rather than contemplating the result, imagine the process of birth and growth. In transurfing, visualization is understood to be the act of focusing on a mental image of the realization process of a current link in the transfer chain. If it is not clear to you how to achieve your goal, focus on visualizing the slide instead. The slide will take you in the necessary direction.